They called it a hotel, but it breathed like a monster. In the heart of 1890s Chicago, where gas lamps flickered through the soot of industry and World's Fair dreams cloaked the city in progress, stood a building unlike any other. It loomed at the corner of South Wallace Avenue and West 63rd Street, brick and mortar twisted with intention, 3 stories tall and a block long. On paper, it was a hotel, but behind its walls, a darkness pulsed, a chilling secret so vast, so calculated, that it would later earn it the nickname that still curdles blood today, the Murder Castle. This was the twisted creation of Herman Webster Mudgett, though the world would come to know him as H.H. Holmes, America's first documented serial killer. Holmes was a man of dualities. Handsome, articulate, and educated in medicine, he could charm the skin off a snake. Women adored him. Men respected him. Employers hired him. And all the while, Holmes studied the human body not for healing, but for harm. He arrived in Chicago in the late 1880s with a sinister vision, and beneath his tailored suits and polite demeanor simmered an unholy ambition to build a fortress of murder. To the public, Holmes was a respectable entrepreneur, opening a grand hotel to accommodate the masses attending the upcoming 1893 World's Columbian Exposition. But to those who would later sift through blueprints and bones, he was a modern-day minotaur, building his labyrinth. And no one, not his fiancés, not his workers, not the detectives, could guess what he had truly built. Construction began in 1887, and Holmes kept things confusing. He constantly hired and fired workers, never letting any crew see more than a small portion of the plans. Walls were built, torn down, rebuilt. Staircases led to nowhere. Doors opened to brick walls. Entire rooms had no windows or exits, and that was no accident. This was by design. The building spanned an entire block and included over 100 rooms. But within it lay gas lines that could flood sealed chambers with noxious fumes, trapdoors that opened to bottomless chutes, soundproof torture rooms, secret peepholes, and a basement that resembled something out of Dante's Inferno, lined with surgical tables, lime pits, and a human-sized furnace. To the guests checking in, it was a quirky hotel. To Holmes, it was a stage, and he was the puppeteer. The World's Fair brought millions to Chicago, and Holmes's hotel sat like a spider's web at its edge. Young women arrived daily, eager for work, adventure, or escape from small-town lives. Holmes greeted them with charm, hired them as stenographers, shopkeepers, or personal assistants. Some became lovers, some became wives. All too many disappeared. One woman, Julia Smythe, lived in the castle with her daughter Pearl. She had been Holmes's mistress. One Christmas Eve, both mother and child vanished. Holmes would later claim Julia died from a failed abortion, but no records, no graves, and no evidence ever surfaced. Another victim, Emmeline Segram, was hired as Holmes's secretary. Days before her wedding to him, she too vanished. Witnesses said they heard screams and saw large trunks being moved from her room. And then there was Minnie Williams, a young heiress who signed over her property to Holmes shortly before vanishing. Her sister Annie followed, never to return. Holmes used their inheritance to fund even darker ventures. Each story ended the same, with silence, with ash. It was the castle's basement that would freeze the blood of even the most hardened detectives. When authorities finally searched the building, they descended into a subterranean chamber straight from a fever dream. There they found vats of acid, quicklime pits, stretched skin, blood-soaked operating tables, a dissecting table with rusted surgical tools, and a furnace large enough to reduce a human body to ash. Bones were everywhere, small ones, likely from children. Some cleaned and articulated like medical specimens. Others half-melted, grotesquely disfigured. In one corner they found a foot. In another, a woman's hair still tangled in scalp, and hidden in a false wall, a blood-splattered dress. It became clear Holmes hadn't just killed for convenience. He'd killed for science, for profit, for pleasure. He sold skeletons to medical schools, organs to shady doctors, and often simply killed to see what would happen. H.H. Holmes wasn't just a murderer. He was a con man of Shakespearean talent. He forged documents, swindled investors, married multiple women under different names. He took out life insurance policies on people he planned to murder, and did. In one infamous scheme, he convinced his longtime associate, Benjamin Pitzel, to fake his death for an insurance payout. But Holmes didn't fake it. He murdered Pitzel, then manipulated Pitzel's wife into letting him take their 3 children. One by one, he killed them too. By the time the law caught up to him in 1894, Holmes had committed more crimes than anyone could count. Some estimate he killed 9, others say 27. Holmes himself boasted of over 200 victims. The truth? We may never know. Holmes's trial was a media circus, a handsome doctor turned killer, building a castle of death. It was too outrageous to be fiction. He acted as his own attorney, calm, smug, unflinching. Even as evidence mounted, eyewitness testimony, personal effects from victims, insurance fraud, bones, hair, ashes, Holmes remained composed. He confessed, then retracted, boasted, then denied. In one interview, he said, "I was born with the devil in me. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer, no more than the poet can help the inspiration to sing." It was less of a defense and more of a manifesto. The jury needed no convincing. Holmes was found guilty and sentenced to death. On May 7, 1896, he was hanged in Philadelphia. Witnesses said his neck didn't snap. He hung there for over 15 minutes, twitching like a puppet whose strings were finally being cut. After Holmes's execution, the murder castle remained, for a time. Locals whispered that screams still echoed through its halls, that the building was cursed, that the darkness Holmes left behind still lingered in the bricks. In 1895, it mysteriously caught fire. Some say it was arson, others divine justice. The structure was damaged beyond repair and eventually demolished. Today, a post office stands in its place, but the basement remains, walled off, hidden, and some who work there say they still hear footsteps, still feel cold patches, still dream of rooms with no exits. In 2017, Holmes's body was exhumed to confirm rumors that he had escaped execution, that he'd bribed officials and swapped bodies, disappearing into the shadows to kill again. But when they opened the coffin, the body was unusually well preserved. His face was still visible beneath layers of concrete. He had requested to be buried in cement to avoid grave robbing. DNA confirmed it. It was indeed H. Holmes. Or was it? Some insist the preservation was unnatural. Others claim the eyes weren't his, and a few even whisper that Holmes had a twin or a stand-in, that the real Holmes walked free, that he continued his work under new names, in new cities. In fact, some link unsolved murders in Canada, London, and even California to his methods. But the most disturbing theory, that H. Holmes was none other than Jack the Ripper, having traveled from London to Chicago between sprees. The timelines overlap, the brutality matches. And Holmes had once studied in England. The theory remains speculative, but chilling, because if it's true, if the same man who built a murder castle was also the one who haunted Whitechapel, then we may never truly know the extent of his evil, or how many walls still hide his secrets. And so, the murder castle is gone, but its shadow still stretches across history. And when you check into a hotel room, you might pause just a moment longer than usual. You might inspect the walls. You might notice the door only locks from the outside. And you might wonder, who built this room and why? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss what's coming next.